You're listening to Book Banter with Dianne Burckhardt, your book talk podcast. Join me every Wednesday for real conversations with authors and publishing insiders, where you get to connect with the humans behind the books you love. Let's get on with our show today. Well, hello, my happy people. Today is Wednesday, July 8th, 2026, and I've got a fantastic show for you today. But before we get started, I hope all of you who celebrated America's 250th Independence Day had a wonderful 4th of July weekend. Hopefully you got to spend some time with family and friends, enjoyed some great food, and that all of your fingers are still intact. Living here in Germany, I do really miss 4th of July barbecues. Our family used to have big ones when I was a kid, and I still miss them. But now let's get on with this week's episode. Today we are stepping into a world where the line between the living and the dead isn't always as clear as it seems. Imagine owning a restaurant where one table is reserved every night for those who have already passed on, and where some spirits still have unfinished business that only you can help them resolve. We explore all of that today, along with the inspiration behind the Ghost Table Trilogy. We also talk about the author's writing process, research, New York City, haunted locations, and how real-life experiences can sometimes become unforgettable stories. But let's not waste any more time with my blather. Let's get right to today's interview. Please welcome to Book Banter with Dianne Burckhardt, author Laura Buchwald. For any of our listeners who are new to you, please tell everyone who you are and what you do.
My name is Laura Buchwald. I am an author. I live in New York City, and I've recently published the second of my trilogy, the second book in my trilogy, the Ghost Table Trilogy. The second book is called the Book of Reservations.
And I think this is perfect because we have the New York City sounds in the background.
Yes, you do. Sorry about that. I can mute if need be.
No, I think that's funny. I think that's perfect.
Okay, right on cue. I don't even notice them anymore.
Yeah, I mean, I only spent a little bit of time in New York, but it's amazing how quick you get used to the background sounds.
Yeah, you get used to the background sounds. You get used to the scaffolding to the point that you don't even notice it until it's gone.
Yeah. You mentioned in your bio that you started writing at a very young age, and now you're working in New York City as a writer and an editor. Was this something that you had always wanted to do, or were there other careers that you had considered at one point?
I always wanted writing and then later on editing to be part of whatever career path I took. And for the most part, it has been. It didn't dawn on me that I could write a book, really, until I did. And I started, so the predecessor to the Book of Reservations is The Coat Check Girl. I started that book many, many moons ago, just sort of as an experiment. I got this idea, this combination of ideas, and I was in a writing group, and I just started to see if I could tell a long form story without thinking about publication. I've always had day jobs and freelance work, editing mostly, but I started this project and then I put it down for a while and then it wouldn't leave me alone. So I picked it up in earnest a decade later than when I started it. But I've always wanted to write. I've always written, but it never dawned on me that creative writing could become a career for me until I really started it in earnest.
Why do you think you actually put that to the side for so long?
I don't know why I put it to the side. Well, I had other projects. I was doing a lot of editing and some writing, freelance writing. I was ghost writing. I was editing a memoir. That's a really good question. I don't know why I put it aside. I know why I picked it back up was that these characters, I just kept thinking about the characters and the world that I had started to create. And I've always been a voracious reader. And I guess one day it just sort of dawned on me, well, why couldn't I do this? Why couldn't I tell a story in a book-length story? So it was really a creative experiment for me. And then the more I workshopped it, I was in a couple of writing groups for a while there. I have one main one, but the more I workshopped it and the more it built, the more feedback I got, the more confident I got. And I entered and won a first chapter contest through the Bronx Council on the Arts. And I just was getting more confidence and more validation. And I wanted to see where the story would go. So I had no publication pressure at the time. I was not thinking remotely about getting it published. I just wanted to get it done.
Yeah.
So it really marinated for quite some time, and the story changed quite a bit and evolved into what it finally became. And it was a delightful experiment because I had the luxury of time and no pressure. I wasn't putting any pressure on myself. The second book, the Book of Reservations, I did have publishing pressure. So I wrote that in a much shorter period of time. I mean, I wrote that on a deadline. The third book in the trilogy, I'm somewhere in between. I have a loose deadline, but I have to get it done. But so the first two books, it was two completely different creative processes, and both of them had their merits for sure.
With The Coat Check Girl, do you think the fact that you actually won that award was one of the things that pushed you to go ahead and publish the book?
I won that award before I put it aside for a while.
Oh, really?
Yeah. And I wish I had a better answer to why I did. I guess it just didn't. I mean, I've always been confident that I can write, but writing a book and writing website copy or writing another person's story, there are very different types of writing.
Yeah.
And I respect literature and the written word so much. I didn't want to do it unless I was really going to put in the effort. And then when I finally did pick it back up, I worked with a writing coach. I started workshopping it in earnest with this second writing group that I had joined, and really felt like I needed to do the story justice. So that award gave me confidence, but it was finite because then I wound up abandoning my project for a couple of years.
Since you did have such a big gap between when you started it and when you finished it, did the story and the characters change significantly between the earlier version and the published version?
Yes. Yes, they did. The world itself, it takes place in a restaurant. The main setting is a restaurant based on a real restaurant in Manhattan. So the world itself was consistent. The characters, my protagonist did not start out being my protagonist.
Oh. And
then there's this wonderful alchemy that can happen in writing where it takes you by surprise when when my writing anyway is at its best and it's in this flow state, and which is not something I can rely on. And your writing takes you by surprise. It's a wonderful feeling. And so the character who wound up being my protagonist just kept showing up in every scene. And I realized it was her story. She was also, well, a couple of things. She was much more cynical in early drafts. I think I wound up making her more likable, but I also had to put her through more. I'm big into optimism and happy endings in books and movies. And I had a hard time putting her through all of the dire straits that make for good reading, good writing, And a writing coach told me I had to be a lot harder on her. So she became more likable. Her situation became more arduous with, I think, positive payoff at the end. And yeah, there were characters I wound up abandoning. I mean, certainly names changed significantly. Minor characters became more fully formed, even if they're secondary.
I always like to explain it between the difference between me writing a story or my characters telling me their story.
Yes. When the character tells you their story, for me, that's the ideal. When I'm just in a given writing session going for, okay, I'm just going to keep writing. As you know, as a writer, you can't edit yourself while you're writing. Nothing will come out. Nothing will get done if you don't just kind of spill it all onto the page and get out that incredibly messy first draft or first, second, and third drafts. But it's wonderful when your characters kind of tell you the direction the story is going in. I like to work with an outline and with the understanding that an outline is fluid. So, I have kind of more of a roadmap than an outline. So I know what point A and then the midpoint and then the end point, but it's the how you get to those points that as a writer, I like to be more flexible on in early drafts.
Yeah. Now, of course, with a trilogy like the Ghost Table Trilogy, we have to talk about the paranormal.
Mm-hmm.
And I know you have done a lot of research for this trilogy, collecting ghost stories, speaking with mediums, taking trips to places like New Orleans. Tell me, what is it that you find most fascinating about all this research that you have had to do into the paranormal for this book series?
Well, I've always believed in something other than what we can, sense with our initial five senses. My sister and I separately as children had the sense that the house we grew up in was haunted. We didn't really discuss it until we were adults, which is kind of funny that it never came up at the time. But I've always believed that there was something more. I wasn't raised with an organized religion, so I wasn't taught a strong sense of what happens after. So I kind of cobbled together my own ideas and became very interested in. I had a couple of uncanny experiences, a couple of experiences where I sensed that there had been a recent death in an apartment that I walked into or somebody's house that I walked into, and turns out that I was right.
Yeah.
And I went to my first medium in 2004. This was after I had lost a couple of people in fairly rapid succession, friends and my beloved grandmother. So a friend had told me about this medium, and this was when, mediums were first on television and becoming more prevalent. And this was the days before social media. And so there was no way to look me up and know who I was linked to. And this first medium that I went to, it was truly stunning, the accuracy of the information that came through. So it would be hard for anybody who had had the experience that I did with this gentleman not to believe that there was something to this. And then I found that the more people I spoke with, the more perfectly rational, sane people have had experiences or know somebody who's had experiences or, grew up in a haunted house or, encountered a spirit, encountered a ghost. And I realized that there are so many stories just among the people that I know. So all of the ghostly anecdotes, the little asides, the kind of rules of the spirit world that I cover in The Coat Check Girl came from people that I've spoken with over the years. So the story came to me because I was spending a lot of time in this neighborhood restaurant right down the block from where I lived, got to know the staff, got to know the way they interacted and functioned as a dysfunctional but loving family. So I was interested in that dynamic. And at the same time, it was an old building, and I started to get the sense that there was some sort of spiritual energy in the place. And I jokingly asked the bartender one day if the restaurant was haunted, and he said, yeah, other people have said that. So this combination of elements, a haunted restaurant and a restaurant family, kind of combined to form the genesis of The Coat Check Girl. And I loved New Orleans. I'd started to spend time there and make friends there. And that's a city that, has a strong connection to the afterlife and a beautiful connection to the afterlife. And, all of these reputedly haunted establishments and buildings and, the whole city is sort of a love letter to the spirit world. So it became a fabulous place to revisit and do research. And I decided to set part of the story there. And that really opened up all of those channels for me.
What do you think keeps bringing you back to the possibility of an afterlife and being able to connect to it? What is it that you get from that?
I get comfort. I mean, I find it fascinating I find the whole concept of it fascinating, and I find it incredibly comforting. I've been to many mediums, as you mentioned, and the same people tend to come through. People whom I've lost, whose energy is very strong, and they come through at every session. My grandmother, an aunt of mine, a friend of mine, now my father, who we lost in summer of 2024. And I just find it really comforting. When I've been to, say, a Catholic funeral or a Jewish funeral. I find that the tradition has always seemed very comforting to me, the tradition that the bereaved subscribe to. And I didn't have that because I wasn't raised with a religion. And so this has sort of become my spiritualism. And yeah, I find it validating and comforting.
You're collecting your own belief system.
I am collecting my own belief system and trying to convey that with absolute respect for other belief systems. And there are people in my life who find all of this preposterous and think, when we are gone, we are gone. And I respect that belief. There's just almost no other way to explain the experiences that I've had with mediums than that there is something more.
We know the one thing that I always like to say to people is if you just look at things scientifically, you can read with measurable instruments levels of energy that exist within a human body. And the basic principle of science is that energy cannot be created or destroyed. It has to be converted. So when the body dies, that energy has to become something else. Exactly.
That's a succinct and excellent way to put it. I'm going to try to quote you on that next time I meet somebody who a naysayer. Yeah, that's just it. The energy is converted and the energy, as you said, is never destroyed. So I don't know how these mediums do it. I mean, I know they all have, there's no two mediums are alike in terms of how they get their information. I know that there are less effective people out there, and there are, like in any industry, there are charlatans, who probably feed on the comfort that people get. People who seek out mediums really, for the most part, want to believe and will try to make whatever information is given fit what it is that they're trying to believe or fit the people that they are hoping to connect with. Again, the good mediums that I've worked with, the specificity, the names, I always ask for words or things to connect to connections to make sure that the person coming through is the person I'm thinking of. And all of that with a good medium, I am convinced there's something to it. I'm convinced that, as you said, energy cannot be created nor destroyed. And so these mediums are harnessing this energy somehow. And some of them get visual cues, some of them get audible cues, some get a combination. But it's a beautiful thing when one works with an effective medium.
So now is a good time to tell us all about your current publication, The Book of Reservations.
Sure. So the Book of Reservations picks up 1 year after The Coat Check Girl ends. And it is about Josie Gray, who is a restaurant owner who has the ability to communicate with spirits. And this gets in the way both at work and at home. She has a partner who does not believe in that world at all, does not want anything to do with it. So she has to learn how to navigate life with this gift and this ability that the world doesn't always accept. So that is her inner conflict, and it gets complicated when spirits start coming to her with very specific needs, with the need to connect with the living. So she's functioning as a medium, not a medium who can control who comes through or, but spirits contact her because they have messages for the living, and she has to bridge these two worlds. So that is the premise of it. And at the same time, she's running this struggling restaurant, struggling to get off the ground in New York City, which is a saturated restaurant market. So she's trying to make her restaurant successful at the same time that spirits are intruding, and there are some living people who do not have her best interests at heart. And so it's all about the challenges of getting a restaurant up and running and being a go-between between the spirit world and the living.
Now, I know Josie's ability to communicate with the spirits gives her a lot of comfort, but then it also creates a lot of tension with her relationships. Why was this emotional conflict important for you to explore?
It was important for me to explore in part because I mean, thankfully, I have a partner who doesn't go to mediums, but accepts that this is my belief system and does believe that there's something out there that he can't quantify or can't see or name. But I've wondered what it would be like, and I've had people close to me who are absolute skeptics. So I've wondered what it would be like I mean, she doesn't just believe, she has proof. And I don't know that I have proof, I have evidence. So she's a step closer to it all than I am. And I've wondered what it would be like to be very close with somebody who just wants nothing to do with that world that she can't help but be in. She doesn't have any say over, like the mediums I've spoken with have the ability to turn it off. They have to, or else they would just be inundated 24 hours a day. She doesn't yet know how to turn it on or off. So she has no choice but to accept that spirits are coming through to her. And I've wondered how frustrating that might be if you are so certain, if you're saying it's raining and your partner is saying it is not raining, and you are seeing, the ground get wet, how to square these two very real parts of her life. She's an otherwise rational person. So she's not an unreliable narrator in terms of, is she or isn't she connecting with these entities? But I found that conflict. I know partnerships with very different belief system, whether it's religion or politics or, just ways of being in the world. And I am always interested in how people navigate such differences.
You've said that this restaurant that you have in the story is actually based on a real restaurant. How much did you take from the actual restaurant for your story?
So this is a restaurant that it's a different restaurant now than it was then. It's been a series of several different places over the years. And as I said, it was on the block I used to live on. So I was spending a lot of time there. In the earliest phases of The Coat Check Girl, the characters were more strongly based upon people that I actually knew there. Because it took place over such a long period of time and the restaurant is no longer the restaurant that it once was, these characters have morphed quite a bit. But I took the bones of what the restaurant looks like, the layout of the restaurant, the fact that it was actually the upstairs ladies' room was where I first felt this weird ghostly presence. And that's where Josie encounters her spirits or her feelings in the first book. So all of that, the physical space itself is very much tied to that space. I fortunately got to do a lot of research in restaurants over the years. So a lot of the scenarios come from places and situations that I've witnessed in restaurants over the years, very loosely based upon. But there's one very minor character in book one who is very much based on a restaurant professional who I know in real life. So it's a combination. It's the physical space is definitely, the characters were initially based upon real people, but much of it is fictionalized. I do name real restaurants in New York City in both these books, New York City and New Orleans. And then the second book has has a couple of chapters in Denver. So I base some of the places on real places there as well.
Did Café Du Monde make it in?
Café Du Monde does make it in.
I was going to say, if you're mentioning New Orleans, you have to.
You have to. Yes, it's a rite of passage. It's referenced in the second book as well. And then there's a restaurant in book one. There's a restaurant in Jackson Square called Muriel's, right in the French Quarter, that has a seance room and that sets a table every night for their resident ghost.
Oh, wow.
And has a seance room, which is where apparently people have encountered their resident ghost. That was the basis for the Ghost Table in the Ghost Table Trilogy, was the idea of setting a table for the departed, setting a table nightly. And then Josie found that idea so beautiful that I decided to replicate it in these stories. And she decides to create a table for people, spirits who were once linked to the restaurant that she comes to own in book two. But yeah, it's been a lot of fun. And I love that. I love research and researching in restaurants and through travel are like, what a gift to be able to do that and work it into my stories. So all three of these books, by the time I'm done with the third one, will have real places and fictionalized spaces based upon real places.
That's great. I love those kinds of books.
Oh, good.
Now, after readers finish reading the Book of Reservations, what do you hope stays with them after that?
I hope that same idea of comfort stays with them, that if in fact readers find that comforting, the idea that our loved ones are not gone forever, that they are still able to look in on us and connect with us, through mediums or sometimes through sending signs. There are a lot of signs in these books. And also on a more earthbound basis, my two main characters both had difficult childhoods for very different reasons and felt they were shaped by these forces that they couldn't control, but are able to move past that. So I want readers to take the idea that we are not beholden to our pasts, that we can change. Our pasts certainly influence who we are, but we're not stuck. We can change and grow and evolve.
Now, I know you're currently working on the third book in this trilogy. Without giving spoilers, what can you tell us?
The third book will jump. So the first book takes place in 1999. The second book takes place in 2000. The third one jumps to 2003. So significantly, it takes place in New York City post 9/11, but with 9/11 in the recent past. So that's the basis for it. Without giving much away, Josie has a very different relationship with her gift. Actually, in all three books, she has a very different relationship with her ability. So it's going to be quite different. How she interacts with the spirit world is going to be quite different in the third book than it was in the first or second.
Now seems like the perfect time to do our 5 quick questions that never turn out to be quick, but I refuse to give up hope.
All right.
Are you ready?
I am ready.
Question 1. What is your favorite late night New York City food?
Ooh, my favorite late night New York City food would probably be, well, my husband's a fabulous cook, so it would be leftovers. But, I love New York City pizza.
Yeah.
It's reputable for, it's got the reputation that it has for a reason.
Yeah. Question 2. If someone said they were going to have a free day in New York City, what is something that you tell them they absolutely must go do?
I live right by the High Line, and I think that is definitely worth experiencing. It's just such an interesting perspective on the city. So if weather permitting, I would say take a walk on the High Line. Of course, we're huge theater lovers, so taking in a show and getting a last minute inexpensive ticket to a matinee on a Wednesday or a Sunday. I think that's a rite of passage in New York City as well.
Mm-hmm.
And of course, our museums are fabulous, but really just walking and seeing where you wind up. Manhattan, anyway, is such a great walking city, as is Brooklyn. I mean, experiencing the outer boroughs is something that New York City is much more than Manhattan. Mm-hmm. So I think experiencing the outer boroughs is important.
I do like Brooklyn, and I do like Queens, too.
Oh, yeah. Queens is wonderful. Queens has like the largest population of different ethnicities of any place in the world. I think more languages are spoken in Queens, more different languages are spoken in Queens than anywhere else. It's reflective of that, so many different cultural influences.
That's one thing I always tell people that I love about living here in Dusseldorf, because if you go stand in the main train station, you can hear about every language you can think of and some you don't know.
That is fabulous. I love that. I love that about New York as well.
So now, since you mentioned theater, question 3. When was the last time you went to the theater and what did you see?
Yesterday, we saw the Rocky Horror Picture Show
nice.
on stage, and it was fabulous. It was I'd never seen the film. I had no idea. I knew loosely what to expect, but it was so much fun and so unique.
See, where I grew up in Kansas, there was a movie theater that played it every weekend,
Okay.
and it was like the midnight movie. You would take a bag of props with you. So when they
Mm-hmm.
say, we're having a toast, you would throw a piece of toast. And when they were walking in the rain with the newspaper over their head, you would pull up a piece of newspaper and put it on your head and squirt a squirt gun up in the air to simulate the rain.
That's fabulous.
This was a regular weekend thing that everybody, every teenager went and did this at some point.
There were a lot of people in the audience who shared that experience, whether in New York City or in, Kansas or wherever, because
Hmm.
there were people in that audience singing along to every song and dressed up, and people who obviously Rocky Horror Picture Show was a major part of their life growing up.
Oh, yeah.
And that was so delightful to see, just the joy that people were getting out of this. And I said to my husband, I mean, we loved it and we didn't have that experience, but how much fun it would be if you were familiar with the story and familiar with all of those songs, just how delightful that would be. So yeah, it was a lot of fun.
I can't imagine growing up with that movie, what it would be like to see it live on stage. That would be amazing.
Yeah, and the performances were fabulous. It was nominated for the Tony nominations, just came out.
Oh, nice.
It received several nominations and deservedly so. Also, I have to put in a plug for Ragtime, which is one of the best things we've seen in recent history. That also got nominated for several things. Yeah, we go to a lot of theater. We see a lot of and off Broadway.
Hmm.
Anything that a friend is in, we'll go see. But, we do get to Broadway somewhat, certainly more off Broadway than Broadway, but there's just great theater. And in this age of AI and in this age of watching entertainment on our phones, it is so nice to see a live performance.
Yeah.
And I have so much respect for people who can get up and perform. And, the energy of the Rocky Horror Picture Show, we saw the matinee, they were doing it again last night.
Oof.
The energy that is needed to perform 8 shows a week or more is really impressive.
Question 4. What is your favorite book-related business? It doesn't have to actually be a bookstore, but book-related business in New York City.
Book related business in New York City. Well, the Housing Works bookstore, which donates proceeds to the AIDS community, I think is a really impressive model. We support them. I love independent bookstores. I can name, there's 192 Books right in Chelsea that is a fabulous, small, well curated bookstore. There's Three Lives and Company in the West Village, also fabulous, well curated, small. I'm a big fan of independent bookstores.
Hmm.
And every time we travel, if we come across one, we'll go in, and usually we have more books than we need, but we love to support our independent bookstores. I do also have to give a plug if you are buying books online for bookshop.org,
Yeah.
which came up I believe it came up during COVID, during lockdown. Bookshop.org, it may take a little bit longer than Amazon, but just a little bit. You tend to get better prices, and they donate proceeds of every sale to independent bookstores. You get to choose your recipient, or else they'll choose one for you if you don't have, a local that you want to support. But that's a fabulous business model and really helpful to independent bookstores and therefore to authors as well.
Yeah. I do love them. Whenever somebody says that they do have their books through them, we make sure that we post that link.
Okay, yes. Well, I do have my books through them. Of course, so many people go to Amazon because it's easier and quicker.
Yeah.
But it just takes a teeny bit more effort and once you're in the system, you're in the system for bookshop.org. So, it'll save whatever store you want to support if you do have one you want to support, and it'll save all your information. And it's my online book retailer of choice.
Oh, nice. Question 5. We're asking the same question of everyone this season because we're making a list to put in our year-end book buying guide that we publish in November for holiday shopping.
Okay.
So for question 5, what book to movie adaptation do you think was the best you have seen so far?
Ooh, what a good question. I'm going to have to give this a little bit of thought. Well, this is going back many years and it's a very sad story, but The Sweet Hereafter by Russell Banks, which was a book told through I believe it's 4 different narrators about the same tragedy, but 4 very different perspectives. I was not sure how they would turn that into a movie, and they did a beautiful job. So that was an answer I used to give a while back, but there have to be more recent ones. We love the movie The Shining, as dark as that is, but I know that Stephen King did not like the way they adapted his book.
Yeah. But they did do another version of it.
They did with Steven Weber. Yeah.
Yeah. And he was much happier with that one.
Okay, I have not seen that one, but maybe I should. Horror is not my genre of choice, but I respect him so much as a writer and how prolific he is and how imaginative. And his book on writing, which is called On Writing, is one of the best that I've read on the craft of writing.
Let's remind all of our listeners who you are and where they can find your books.
My name is Laura Buchwald, and my first 2 books, The Coat Check Girl and The Book of Reservations, can be ordered ideally through your local bookstore. Second choice is through bookshop.org. And then, of course, you can get them on Amazon or Barnes & Noble. Actually, I should put Barnes & Noble before Amazon. So, yes, you can order them online at your online retailer of choice, and you can order them through your local bookstore.
And when do you think you might be coming out with the 3rd book in your trilogy?
That is a $1 million question. It'll come out in 2027, hopefully in the early part of the year, but that really depends on me and when I am done with what I don't think is an incredibly messy draft. So hopefully, I'm looking to finish my draft within the next month or so, and then launch into revisions, which are a vital part of the process and a really satisfying part of the process.
Well, I think that just means that everybody needs to go follow you on your social media so that they will be aware when the next book is ready to go.
I think they should too. I'm on Facebook and Instagram as Laura Buchwald Author, and I have a website, which is my name, Laura Buchwald, BuchWald.com.
And of course, as always, we're going to have all of your information and links to all of your social media in the description of today's podcast, so everyone can just click and go and find you and your books.
Wonderful. It's been wonderful speaking with you.
Yeah, this was fabulous. I had so much fun. Thank you for doing this. And maybe whenever you get the 3rd book out, we can have you come back.
I would love to.
Fabulous. We'll do that. So there you have it, folks. That is my interview with Laura Buchwald. I keep wanting to use the German pronunciation for her name, Buchwald. It's really hard to stop myself sometimes. Regardless, I hope you enjoyed our conversation as much as I did. Laura is an amazing interview, and I cannot wait for part 3 of her Ghost Table Trilogy to come out. Be sure to check the links in today's episode description, where you will find everything you need to pick up the copies of The Coat Check Girl and The Book of Reservations. That way, you'll be all caught up and ready for the 3rd and final book in the Ghost Table Trilogy when it's released. Now, next week, I will be talking with Casey Miller about her debut young adult romance, Meet Me Under the Lights. If you're a fan of small town settings, friends to lovers romances, baseball, and coming-of-age stories, you're not going to want to miss this conversation. We'll be talking about the inspiration behind her book, her journey from teacher and librarian to published author, and so much more. So be sure to come back and join us next week. Now, before I let you go, I have a little bit of news about Burckhardt Books and Book Banter Productions. In case you haven't noticed, we have officially opened a Zazzle store. You can find us at Zazzle.com and search for Burckhardt_books. And of course, there is a link in today's podcast for you to easily find that. We're working diligently to add all kinds of great merchandise featuring this podcast, Book Banter Magazine, Burckhardt Books, our different book series, and plenty of fun designs for all the indie authors, readers, and anyone who simply loves books. Because, if you love books like we do, you really need to check out our merch. And just in case you missed it, I recently had the pleasure of being a guest on the E-Reads podcast with Liz Bullard, who was my guest here on Book Banter just last week. You can find that interview that I did with Liz on her show at burckhartbooks.com under the Burckhardt Books news section on our main page. Just click the Listen Now button and watch our Substack live interview. Since we did this on Substack, of course, it now means that I officially have a Substack account. I am still figuring it out, but it has a lot of interesting possibilities. So I'll keep you up to date as that social media platform develops for us. And just one last thing, I would love to hear from all of you. If there are products, features, other things that you would like to see from Burckhardt Books and Book Banter Productions, drop us a line at burckhartbooks.com/contact. We would love to hear your ideas and suggestions. It would really let us know what we can do to better serve you. Well, I think that's enough for today, folks. So now you know what time it is. It's time for you all to go forth and be really happy, especially since we have more great authors coming up for you. Thank you for joining us today. Be sure to subscribe to Book Banter with Dianne Burckhardt on your favorite podcast streaming service. Because if you love books like we do, you do not want to miss a single episode of this podcast.